Okay, this week our education topic is going to be on carbohydrates. So we've already talked a little bit about carbs and sugar and processed food, but today we are going to talk a little bit more about good carbs and good carb choices and carb timing, and then where that fits in your current lifestyle with your goals, and then sustainability and long-term how carbohydrates fit into your diet. So part of deciding whether or not carbohydrates can be a part of your day-to-day diet for now, for weight loss, and going forward through the rest of your life is going to take some consideration of your family health history and your activity level. Okay, so carbohydrates are our body's first really fuel source. If you give your body carbohydrates in the form of glucose, it will use that first. So, and then it'll store whatever you're not burning. Okay, so it gets digested the quickest. I've talked about that before. As soon as it hits your tongue, carbohydrates begin to break down through your enzyme amylase, and then it's very quickly digested. Hence why there's usually about a 2-hour window with carbohydrates, and then you feel hungry again. So it gets digested quickly, it spikes your glucose quickly, and it spikes your insulin quickly, and then you have a crash. So one thing we do know is for weight loss, you do need to restrict either carbohydrates or fat. They will both get you to fat loss. However, restricting fat, you are going to feel hungry, and more than likely that will not keep you satiated, and that's not long term. Going on a low carb diet can be long term and can be very satiating and a very easy way to live. However, eliminating fat is very difficult. But like I said, if you have glucose in the form of carbohydrates and fat at one meal, your body is going to burn glucose first and store whatever you don't use, and then it will store fat in your fat cells. So when I say store, I am referring to fat storage, okay? So if you want to lose weight and you're deciding like it's dinner time and you want to have a steak, that's great. Steak has fat in it, that's fine, that's good. You should keep that meal relatively low carb because you're having a high fat meal, right? If you're having a cheeseburger, you should not have the bun, not have the fries. Why? Because you're having a high fat meal. If you have carbs with the fat, you're going to store fat. You're not going to be losing any weight, okay? Now, is it going to be detrimental long term if you were to have a cheeseburger with a bun, occasionally? And when I mean occasionally, I mean like 3 times a year? No, absolutely not. And then once you hit your weight loss goals, you'll have a little bit of flexibility where you can do that. But for our purposes of this nutrition journey, we really need to be aware of that carb-fat combo at mealtime. So if you're having a high-fat meal, keep your carbs low. If you're having a low-carb meal, you can have more fat, okay? And then I discussed this in the last video. You really are served best to save your carbohydrates for afternoon and evening and post-workout. Now, in this week's education, I give you a PDF with a list of healthy carb choices that include, starchy vegetables, tubers, and low-sugar fruit like peppers, tomatoes, avocado, olives, grapefruit, dark chocolate. 85% or higher is the best. Okay, so there are plenty of carbohydrates you can have, and carbohydrates are good for you. It is something you need to pay attention to, though, when you're having carbohydrates, that you make sure they're in their whole food form so you get the fiber with them. So part of fruits and vegetables and carbs, the reason why, they're still healthy choices, they're still good choices, is because the fiber is still intact. So the skin, the seeds, the cellulose, the plant wall, that's the fiber, and we need that. So if you're going to have an apple, eat the whole apple. Don't peel the skin off. Obviously, don't eat the core, but you get my drift. Eat the skin. If you're having, a cucumber, have an English cucumber so you can eat the skin. Eat the skin on your sweet potato. Eat the skin on the squash if it's edible. Don't peel your fruits and vegetables if you don't have to. Wash them really well and then eat them, because that's where the fiber comes from. And when you consume glucose with fiber, it actually lowers your blood glucose and therefore lowers insulin. Now, research and studies show, it's a fact, that if insulin is high, you can't lose weight. Unless you are hyperthyroid or you have some other genetic disorder, you will not lose weight with insulin elevated, okay? And so if we're trying to lose weight, we need to keep insulin low. So we really do need to be aware of carbohydrates and keep our carbohydrates as low as we can for weight loss. All right, so again, what we want to be avoiding, as I've said from the beginning, are highly processed carbohydrates. So potato chips, cupcakes, Pop-Tarts, muffins, scones, cookies, bread, pasta, rice. Rice isn't detrimental in the long term, and it's something you could have occasionally. Like I had rice on Sunday. I had sushi, so I had sushi rice, right? But I don't do that very often, and I also have to take a look at my own health history, right? I have a family health history of diabetes, type 2 and type 1, and I had PCOS in my 20s. So I already know my soil is predisposed to diabetes and insulin resistance. I already know that. So I've got to take that in consideration for me. Like my lifestyle is going to be low carb. But for somebody like my husband who has no history of diabetes in his family, and he metabolizes almost any macronutrient he takes in, and he's got tons of muscle and he's very active, he can have carbohydrates. He could have rice and oatmeal every day if he wanted to. But for most people, that is not the case. And for most people eating the standard American diet, that is not the case. So if you have any questions about carbohydrates, this is a fun topic and I love discussing it, and there's so much science and research that goes into it. If you want a good book, I did put this on your resource list, but check out Dr. Ben Bickman. He's on Instagram, Facebook. He has a private group where he does Facebook Lives, but he is a professor and a research scientist, and he specializes in insulin resistance and metabolic health. So he's a wealth of knowledge on this, and is actually where I've learned a lot of the stuff I know about it. So if you want to deep dive a little further, you can look him up, and then Dr. Jason Fung is also a great resource. So if you have any questions this week about carbohydrates, please let me know.